Welcome to episode 15 of the Search with Candour podcast, recorded on Sunday the 23rd of June 2019. My name is Mark Williams-Cook, and as usual, I'm here to help you with all of that search engine stuff. In last week's episode, we did our first ever listener Q&A, where some of you were kind enough to submit your questions about search, and I was doing my best to answer them. We've had some more great questions this week, and one particularly interested me. It was about black hat SEO and spam reports and what to do to try and get Google to action them. And this set me on a train of thought. So unless something happens major in search and next week, the next episode of Search with Candour will likely do a deep dive about Google penalties, how to get Google to take action when you see someone doing something they shouldn't be, the different types of penalties, what causes them, and some misconceptions. I think it's a really interesting topic, and I just want to gather some more recent case studies from other people first before we delve into it. And if you've got a question you want to hear the answer to, talked about on the podcast, you can follow us on Twitter and send us a DM with that question. We're on @Candour Agency on Twitter. It's been at least 2 weeks since we've mentioned schema on the podcast, which is a long time for the Search with Candour podcast. I mean, we're normally mentioning it every episode. And this episode, you'll be hearing from technical SEO specialist Andrew Martin, who was kind enough to come and give a talk at the end of last year at SearchNorwich called How to Use Schema to Enrich Search Results and Improve Your Click-Through Rate. He does a really good job of introducing the concept of schema, and actually such a good job that I just refer people to this video of his talk now if they're new to schema or they want a primer on the topic. It's a really confident and structured introduction to the subject, which is a really, really important subject. Especially, again, in the last week, we've seen SEOs work out new ways to mess with FAQ schema, injecting emojis and links directly into search result pages. You can see the full video of Andrew doing his talk and check out his slides on the show notes, which are, as usual, at search.withcandour.co.uk. And of course, if you're nearby Norwich and you want to come along, the next Search Norwich meetup is on the 4th of July, and you can find out more about that at searchnorwich.org. Enjoy.
Well, it's a bigger room when you stand up here. Hello everyone, Andrew Martin, technical SEO specialist, but you know, who the hell am I? About 200 years ago, when I learnt to code HTML, CSS, the internet looked like this. This is the BBC homepage, 1998. Maybe the site has changed, perhaps the kind of news hasn't really. There's a precedent for impeachment. There's some border things going on with the UK and the Republic of Ireland. So the web looked quite different. 99.9% of it was that, still under construction and probably never really got built. And my mobile phone looked like this, and you wouldn't be able to go anywhere near the internet on that. I've worked for a number of companies, disability charity, academic publisher, an exam board, a price comparison site, and I'm currently working for the guys in the middle there, Abcam, which is a biotech company, works in antibodies. Essentially, this would also say who I was, and this is an example of schema, and we'll come on to that a little bit more in a moment. So essentially, search engines want to get users to the best answer in the fastest possible time, and users expect search engines to get them to the best answer in the fastest possible time. But what does best mean? The internet is full, in my opinion, of it has a high volume of low value absolute piffle. And that could be articles of, say, exclusive, royal flush his own toilet with own hand, or it might be, here's an article about fun days out in Suffolk, and we know that that's rubbish. So how can we stand out amongst all of this nonsense? And if you haven't found him yet, he's there. essentially, schema is one of the devices that you could use to help you stand out in those search results. And essentially, it is a structured vocabulary which enables you to be really granular about the information that is on your website. So you can really identify the minute detail to just help those search engines better understand your web page content and your email content. Schema.org thinks that it's on kind of more than 10 million websites. I feel that that's an old statistic from their site, so it's probably much more than that. And you need to have some level of knowledge of code or markup. If you're the kind of person who can edit HTML, kind of a basic standard, or maybe you're, say, an email marketer and sometimes you have to just pop over to the code version to just tweak that font, which just for some reason will never go right. Or if you are able to write, say, JavaScript, then you should be able to work with schema. And it's also evolving and expanding constantly. There's a dedicated group of webmasters and data analysts and linguists and all kinds of people who work on websites and language and taxonomy who are working to evolve and expand this into new areas. Behind schema are 4 brands which hopefully you will recognize, obviously Yahoo, Microsoft, these people called Google, and the other one is Yandex, which is Russia's largest search engine. They're also a pretty big deal in Turkey, Ukraine, Belarus, Kazakhstan, and somewhere else I've forgotten. But the one that's missing here, the big search engine that's missing here is Baidu. So if you have a site that serves an audience in China, then structured data and schema is going to be a little bit different for you. And they have their own method of implementing that for that particular audience. But schema is your friend, but schema needs a friend as well, and that friend is called JSON. Not that JSON, this JSON. json-ld, which stands for JavaScript Object Notation for Linked Data. And essentially, we're back to this slide again. And if you can see at the front here, the people in the cheap seats, you'll have to wait for the slides. But at the top here, we have a little mention of a script type called LD plus JSON. And at the bottom, the script closes. So json-ld is like your package that's delivering the schema that's here in the middle, the information. So you have to have the two together. There are other ways of implementing schema, but Google has said that json-ld is their preferred method. There are essentially kind of 3 parts to schema. One is the context, and for structured data, it is mostly schema. Again, Google will recommend that, but there are some alternatives which are kind of important if you are doing schema for a company, where you can kind of reference other sources. Within that, there are types of schema, so recipes, person, event, a book, a video object, a data set. It's a whole expanding group of types. And within those, I said it was structured, within those are properties. So for the recipe type, there's a property where you can declare or itemize on your page the number of people that recipe will serve. For a person, you could specify their date of birth. For an event, you might be able to say, okay, this is the currency for the ticket that's on sale for that event. And for the book, you could say this is the author, the publication year, the ISBN, the number of pages, etc. So you can go right down to that fine detail and declare it there in the code of the page to help that search engine better understand your page content. I'm just going to touch on a few examples that you may want to use for your site, or maybe you already are. The first one is company, so we're going to bring up the canaries. And so that's your knowledge panel if you search for Norwich FC, and you'll see that on the right-hand side of your desktop search results. And you can use schema to help populate that information. And the kind of things that you can help with schema is you could name the the CEO, the year that it was founded. You could give a description. You could declare the logo. You could associate the social media channels. Sometimes you might see the social media accounts along the bottom here. But this one works best if you work it in conjunction with Google My Business. So if you have not declared, if you have not claimed your Google My Business account, then you really should, and make sure that the information in your company schema matches that in your Google My Business account. Next up is product, and this one I think is more visual. So if you have done a search for a particular product, then you will see things like review stars, you will see prices. Over in image search, you will see more information emerging there as Google expands that area with price points, stock availability, price ranges. So you can really add extra information into your product pages that helps populate this kind of stuff. So currency, stock level, rating, as I said. And here's my blatant Norwich reference of St. Cathy Dennis of Norwich. So this is an old pop CD that is on Discogs. And Discogs I love, not because I'm a vinyl nerd, but because they do their schema really, really well. And if you look at their schema for this particular page, it itemizes just everything from, you know, the person who mixed the album to the 5th track on side 2, and it will tell you all the writers. They've really gone to town on it. And the result for them is if you search for this album or search for this album and say review, then you'll see something like this with the star rating, the number of votes, so you're getting an aggregated score there. You can see the currency, you can see the price, you can see that it's in stock. So right there in the search results, you know you can click on that, you can see the review, it's in stock, you can buy it, you can get it into your cart, and then you're a happy customer. Their meta description is a bit dull in this example, I'm afraid, but you know, perhaps they could fix that. I'll email them. Next up is events, and I actually chose a bit of a rubbish screenshot for this one because I should really have chosen this venue. So Norwich Castle, again we have the knowledge panel here on the right for desktop, and we can see at the bottom here there is a section here where it's populating events, and it's when I took the screenshot, the next one up was the Edith Cavell story, which took place on the 1st of November. So the search engine is pulling the information that's been enriched by schema to populate this part of the search results. But if you look for this venue, you will see this very event appearing in the first slot there. And that automatically updates because you have already given it your event date, event time, so it knows that it's relevant. You can name the venue or the artist. So if you search for a musician, you will see their gig dates. If you search for a venue, like in this example, you can see their event dates. You can include things like maps, prices for the tickets, the time, but quite a lot of third-party sites are using this at the moment. So the likes of meetup.com, Eventbrite, Ticketmaster I think is in there as well, but there's nothing to say that it couldn't be your site that does this. If you were to click on one of these, then you're going to see something like this, which is kind of like a sub-search, I guess, where you're seeing more information about the actual event here, and below here is a whole load of organic results based on this query at the top here, which is the name of the event and the date. So you're getting a much more kind of accurate search result there. The next one is the site link search box, or as I call it, the in-SERP on-site search, which makes sense to me. Probably you think I'm nuts, but what that looks like. Anyone from B&Q in here in any context? Good, right, they're terrible. So if you search for B&Q as a brand search, you get this. So again, you've got the knowledge panel here, and then you've got the site links here sitting in search. You've got their main site, which is diy.com. So I'd imagine maybe B&Q does get quite a lot of brand searches. But you also get the search box here. And in this search box, I've typed the word sheds. And what do I get when I click Go, I get a Google search results page of sheds on the B&Q site. Okay, maybe I will click on one of those and end up on the B&Q sheds page for, I don't know, jersey sheds, whatever they might be, plastic sheds, which I think is a box really. But also I've seen at this point, if I'd searched for, say, Ronseal varnish in that search box, I may well have seen B&Q's search results page for Ronseal varnish and the different types you could get, but I may see adverts from the competitors like Wix or someone selling Ronseal varnish in the search results from B&Q, which doesn't sound like a good thing. So what John Lewis are doing, anyone from John Lewis? Never mind, but they're doing well. John Lewis, if you search for lamps in the same search box, this is what happens, you go there. So instantly you are plonked into the brand, you're plonked into the search results page for that query on the John Lewis site. You are put amongst the price points, the images, you are there, you're suddenly going, hang on a minute, this is lamps and there's a lamp in the women's category. What on earth might that be? And off you go down a rabbit hole of search trying to find out what that might be. So you can see how that one would be quite powerful for your users because you're not keeping them in Google, you're actually putting them into search in your site where they can absorb the rest of your products. Essentially, this snippet of code, and yeah, you'll get these slides, this snippet of code is the piece of code that you'd need to put into your home page, making sure that you update from the example code the URL for your home page and also just update your search query string so that it accurately represents how your search query string looks or your URL looks on your own site. And once you've got that in and you have got a canonical URL on your home page, then you are kind of ready for search to come along and consider that for a search box in search results. Now, that takes time and it's not guaranteed. So it works for brand queries. So if you've got a brand name that is fairly generic, then you may never get that search box turn up, regardless of whether you've got everything else lined up. So if you've got a very unique name, then put this in and see if that can help bring traffic through to your own site. So if you're still with me, if you want to have a go at schema, one of the best things I do is to kind of sandbox it. So I will write a piece of code or I will go to Google's structured data testing tool and I will put a piece of code in the first box that you see on the code snippet tab, and then I'll click run test, which will give me something like this with my piece of code on the left hand side and the test results on the right hand side. And this is the piece of schema that I showed you right near the start, which is about me as a person, and it hasn't any errors or any warnings. If it had found any, it would highlight that, it would tell you which of these are incorrect, and if you clicked on one of those, it would then highlight which line in your code was incorrect. So it's a really useful tool, and you don't need to pay for this tool, it's free, you can just go ahead and use it. Or you could put a new test and put a URL in and test another page to maybe see how your competitor does it, or whether your developers have released it yet or anything like that. So it's a really useful tool for free that you can use. Again, this is small text, so people at the back, you'll get these in the slides. Google have got a new code lab, and the top link, they claim that in 29 minutes you'll know how to code some structured data for the recipe card, which is a very visual type of rich result. There's also the URL to the structured data testing tool and the schema documentation, and there's a really good app called schemaapp.com, and that's a tool where you can actually write in the information and it writes the schema code for you. That is, I think, free to use, and it's a really powerful tool. So have a play with that one, schemaapp.com. And there's json-ld as well, which has a kind of similar sandbox environment. This is an old report, or an old styled report from within Search Console. So if you're thinking, well, okay, so we could do all of this, but how can we see if it's actually being found, or what is the impact of that? You can see here that this is Google's view of schema on a particular site. So it has discovered schema, and you can see it kind of increased there at July 2018 and kind of went along, and it's kind of gone along as it's crawled more of your site. And it tells you which types of schema it's found, and it also says if there's any errors. So this is a site mostly about people and places, and it's just itemizing that stuff for you. And you can click on each of those, and it will give you more information as to which pages it has found, and again, whether there's any errors on each of those, which you can then address. So essentially, don't fake or stuff schema code into your site. If it doesn't represent the contents of your page, then don't put it into the schema, because it looks kind of old school SEO where you could just bung a whole ton of keywords in and hope for the best. But that will look spammy to the search engines, so don't stuff it into your code. Go really niche instead. So for some company types, for example, they can go right down to like a plumber or like an orthodontist, or you don't have to go company. You can actually go really quite granular with your details. Make sure you use json-ld to deliver that schema into your site, as it's Google's preferred method. Make sure you test it and be patient, because it takes a while for it to be found. It relies on the health of your site generally as to whether search engines can digest it well, and also you'd need to be considered for the search results. So it takes a while to start appearing in search. So thank you for your ears. And there's some links there which you'll see in the slides, which will help you further. But yeah, thank you very much.
That was Andrew Martin. I really hope you enjoyed it. You can get a list of the resources he provides, his slides, and the video of his talk at the show notes at search.withcandour.co.uk. My name is Mark Williams-Cook, and I'll catch you next week, which will actually also be next month on Monday, the 1st of July.